I want to start the show with talking about something that I saw Finn McKenty of the Punk Rock MBA. As you know, we've talked about him many, many times on this podcast. Love his content, love what he talks about. And he recently posted a video, and the title was called Rockism is Killing Music. It might be too late. And as soon as I saw it, definitely found it interesting, definitely wanted to see what it was about. And let me just give you his definition of what even rockism is, or what he obviously did the research on this. Let's talk about what rockism is, and is it really killing music? Let's see what Finn has to say.
Toxic. I think it's the reason why the overall tone of any kind of discussion around music is so negative. But to explain what I mean, let's get into some specifics. At the most basic level, rockism is exactly what it sounds like. It's the belief that rock as a genre is the center of the musical universe. As Douglas Wolk said, expanding on the New York Times piece that I mentioned earlier, rockism is treating rock as normative. In the rockist view, rock is the standard state of popular music, the kind to which everything else is compared explicitly or implicitly. So, for instance, it's a rockist opinion that pre-stereo era blues and country are interesting less in their own right than because they anticipated rock, or that Run DMC and Alison Krauss are notable because their virtues are also the virtues of rock, or that...
Well, I would argue that Run DMC's virtues are not the virtues of rock, but sure. And I'm sure he's going to say this, but isn't this kind of thinking just considered at this point a boomer point of view?
Sierra's goodies isn't interesting because it fails to act like rock. And that is a whole lot of words to basically say that rockists only care about music if it validates the very specific narrow range of music, which they define as important and authentic. Everything outside of that is ignored or rejected. As one example of that, Post Malone. He came out in 2016 and became one of the biggest names in hip hop almost overnight, with his first two albums, which were both smash hits on a commercial level, but also, at least in my opinion, some of the best mainstream music to come out in like a decade. Both absolutely incredible. You know I said it, I am better now, better now. I only say that 'cause you're not around. But despite all of that, rock fans wouldn't give him the time of day because, again,
this one did. I did.
They don't care about anything outside of rock. Until a couple years ago when it came out that actually he's a big fan of bands like Pantera, Megadeth, and Power Trip, and he did a live stream of Nirvana covers. And then suddenly...
Let me just say this, and I praised Post Malone for doing that Nirvana cover set, especially during the pandemic. I thought artists like him streaming for free, not charging people, giving them content, giving them music, but also giving them a different side of himself was so important, especially during those times. But also, if you're a person who had to hear that he was a fan of Pantera or saw him in a Slayer shirt, and now you like him and now you think his music's cool, you suck. Listen to the music. Don't like being drawn in just by those, the simpleton way of thinking is just... that's why I can't stand the tastemakers or this, what he's explaining as rockism. Rockism only matters if you want it to. What I mean by that is rock fans or a rock critic or a rock writer or a rock and roll A&R at a label or something, or even an A&R at an independent label could publicly state that the new Post Malone album is great. That's it. They don't have to say any more or any less. Just say it's great. And imagine the ripple effect that has upon the people that A, listen to the music that those people put out into the universe, or B, what it does for the people who might listen to the music that those artists who belong to those people or are somehow tied to those people. Imagine what that would do for those folks. So like, for real though, like who are we talking about that really like, yeah, I didn't listen to Post Malone or I didn't appreciate him until I saw him in a Pantera shirt. Who cares about someone like that? I guess people do.
Everyone decided that actually Post Malone was cool and his music was actually pretty good. They wouldn't acknowledge the validity of his music until he kissed the ring of what they believed to be quote-unquote real music. In other words, old rock bands. Or as another example, back in the 2000s, Sum 41. The same people who hated Blink-182, Good Charlotte, and New Found Glory would give Sum 41 at least a little bit of credit because they name-dropped Iron Maiden and Judas Priest in Fat Lip.
Yeah, but they also made after this record, they made rock and roll songs. So that probably had something to do with it. They made very guitar, like heavy guitar driven, very riff driven music. And that probably had something to do with it. But I remember seeing these guys live early on, early on. Honestly, probably at a Warped Tour or something like that, right after this record came out. And they would get on stage and they would go to the crowd, name a metal band, name your favorite metal band. We'll play the riffs, we'll play the song. And they would do it. People would throw out Metallica, people would say Megadeth, people would say whatever, and they would do it. They have an appreciation for it, but also they're just really good players. They write good songs. And I don't think I guess, A, don't judge a book by its cover, but B, go beneath the surface and dig a little deeper into what a band might offer other than a song, as we can see on the screen here, other than a song like Fat Lip, where they just mention the bands. They really do pay homage to those bands in their music, especially after this record. Great song. Great record.
The point here is that in this rockist paradigm, artists are only seen as interesting or valid if they pay tribute to or somehow have some sort of tie to the classics of the rock canon. Like how metal fans who generally hate rap seem to sort of accept Public Enemy because they did a song with Anthrax 35 years ago. Now, just to be clear, I think it's totally okay if you love the classics and you appreciate it when artists pay tribute to them. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But when the rockist mentality requires them to pay tribute to rock artists of the past, that is a problem. Because in the words, again, of Douglas Wolk, quote, "It chains both artists and their audience to an ideal rooted in a particular moment of the past."
I mean, I would agree with that. However, I think generalizing metal fans or rock fans to this sort of reduced state of we only care if the artist mentions or we can see, if it's right in our face that the artist really truly does appreciate rock or metal, it's like, you can hear it in the sound. And I think some people do give the sound that sort of due or that sort of credit, but I get what's going on here. I get what he's saying.
And why that's a problem should be obvious. Almost all the musical movements that we now love were radical departures from what came before them. Punk, nu metal, hip hop, the list goes on and on and on. All of them made a huge break from the past and in some cases even consciously rejected it, and that is exactly why they were great. And so if we have this mindset where we only accept something if it's very clearly tied to the past, well, then we're not going to get any of those new movements. And personally, I think that would be tragic if you care about the development of art. And let's talk about another example of how, in my opinion, rockism stifles innovation. Back in 2022, Falling in Reverse had to cancel a show when some of their laptops got lost. And for anybody who may not be familiar and they're wondering why losing a laptop is such a big deal, these days, just like with most bands, those laptops pretty much run their entire show. They sync.
Now, we talked about this on the podcast when this happened. And look, I had a mixed sort of reaction to this idea. On the first part of me was like, I totally get why they didn't want to play the show without the laptops. There was the second part of me that goes, well, man, imagine how respected they would have been by their fans and by all these people that Finn is talking about right now if they had just gone out and rocked it without the tracks. Now, would it have sounded like the records? No. Would it have sounded pristine? No. But it would have been a stripped down version of the band that you, A, if you're there, the band that you like, and B, if you're a person who pays attention, even the slightest bit, it would be a stripped down version that they could have really performed well on and maybe perhaps won some people over. But that's where I stand. I don't fault them for not, wanting to play the show without them. If they had, believe me, even if they sounded bad, I wouldn't have criticized them. Not a chance.
The video and lights together, and they also control the playback of any backing tracks used in the music that for whatever reason can't really be reproduced live by a regular band. For example, the synths in the breakdown of Watch the World Burn. And this ended up creating...
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. All that stuff in the background is cool, but they could have played that song without that and really sold it to the crowd. Again, I don't fault them for not wanting to, but I put myself, when we talked about this initially, I put myself in that position. I would have been like, just go out there and rock their faces off. But I get it. I understand.
Huge controversy kicked off by Eddie Trunk, formerly of That Metal
Boomer.
Show on VH1, who
Boomer.
said, "How much longer are fans, promoters, media just going to accept the epidemic of live rock shows not really being live? Paying your hard-earned money to see a band play live that's not truly live?" And to me, this is pure rockism, because at the core of rockism is the idea that authenticity is at the core of everything, and that perhaps the very most important thing in all of music is the live show. And specifically, if it's not 4 or 5 guys standing on stage playing every single note that you hear, then somehow that's not authentic. And that might sound okay at first, but let's think about this for a minute. Take a band like Avenged Sevenfold, who might very easily have 6 or 8 tracks of guitars at certain places in some of their songs. What are they supposed to do about that when it's time to play a show? Do you want them to sound worse live by just leaving all of that out because they can't have 8 guitarists on stage? Or would you rather they just use some backing tracks to make it sound like it does on the album? But it's more than just that. This sort of hatred of backing tracks really limits artists, because if we don't want people to use backing tracks live, well, that means they can't use any electronics or any orchestral elements or anything else other than like 2 guitar tracks, because those can't be reproduced live without bringing a huge crew on the road, which for most bands is just not financially viable. And this is one of the biggest problems with rockism. It actively holds back innovation by restricting the definition of valid art to basically, if it doesn't look and sound like something from 1976, it's trash. And is that the world that we want to live in? I don't think so. I think that we should want artists to experiment with all kinds of new ideas and use whatever technology
Agreed.
they want to bring those ideas to life.
Agreed.
And as far as the live show goes, I don't really understand this obsession and hatred for backing tracks. Like, if you're having a good time at the show, why does it matter if they use a few tracks?
Totally. It's all about the fans. If the fans enjoy it, who gives a fuck? Who cares what I say? Who cares what Finn says? Who cares what you say? If the fans show up and they have fun to that music and to the band and have fun with the band that are using backing tracks, who cares? Who cares? It doesn't matter. We don't matter when our opinions do not matter. If you can book a room and fill it up with people who want to hear your songs the way that they hear them on the albums, which means you provide those backing tracks, then that's all that matters. That's it.
Legendary critic Robert Christgau actually had a great quote about this. To be a rockist was to demand a perception of honesty in pop music, no matter how much artifice that honesty involved. And when you're standing on a stage, playing an instrument and singing words you've memorized, there's no getting around artifice. And he's totally right, because if you think about it, there's really nothing about a live show that is quote-unquote authentic. It's an entire
Yeah, but the word artifice is unnecessary in that example and in that statement. It's all subjective. It's all about, again, the fans. What do they want? If you start playing shows after you put out an album that's very track heavy and the fans stop showing up, then you stop using the tracks. But if they keep showing up, then you keep doing it. So this whole idea that it's artifice, it's like, okay, fine, I guess. It's a $10 word used in a $1 statement, if you ask me.
entirely contrived performance. Like, there's a light show that's very carefully designed to set a certain mood at exactly the right time and the right song to make you feel something. Every detail of the show is rehearsed to be perfect. Everyone stands in a certain place with very carefully marked off boundaries. And there's a whole crew of stage
Nothing wrong with that. It's what the fans come to expect.
hands and other
The idea of Jimi Hendrix lighting his guitar on fire or the Who blowing up their drums, that's gone. It's been gone a long time. And, if you want to take an even later example of this, you're talking about Nirvana and the very unpredictable aspect of their live music, breaking things, jumping into the crowd, jumping into the drums. There are a lot of people from that time period. I never saw Nirvana, but there are a lot of people from that time period that did see them multiple times that, they just claim, hey, very influential, revolutionary band, but live, it just kind of wasn't that great. So where do you draw the line?
production people on deck to make sure that everything goes off without a hitch and that every guitar is perfectly in tune. And a lot of the same people who would complain about backing tracks would also be the same people to complain if one of the guitars wasn't perfectly in tune. And so my question is, with all of that in mind, why is it suddenly off limits to use backing tracks? I'm really not sure that makes a lot of sense. To me, it just kind of feels like people are looking for something to be upset about. And speaking of which, I have a feeling that this is not going to be a very popular thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. I want to question one of Rockism's core values, which is the emphasis on the live show itself. Like you've heard people say a million times, like, oh yeah, that band's pretty cool, but can they pull it off live? And the unstated assumption here is that live shows are the standard by which everyone should be compared to, rather than studio performances. And my question is, why would that be true? Why is the live show inherently more valid than a studio performance? To me, I think this is just another purity test for gatekeepers to use. And what I mean by that is that it's always going to be the case that of all the people who know of any given artist, a relatively small portion of them will ever see that artist live. That's just how it works, right? Like even somebody like Metallica that plays to stadiums full of 50,000 people every night, that's actually a pretty small fraction of the probably, billion or so people on the planet who are familiar with their music. And so I think by emphasizing the live show, it's really just another way of sort of making people feel like they aren't real fans and invalidating their opinions by drawing on this supposed insider knowledge. Like, oh,
totally. Couldn't agree more. We'll stop it there. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And as someone who plays music, the live show idea many times, I mean, I've heard from record labels, I've heard from A&Rs, I've heard from music attorneys, I've heard from managers, several people get the live show better, make the live show better. And while I understood it at the time, I told a story on this podcast about how I was in a band that was being recruited, we'll say that, or scouted by a record label, and they had us play, using major air quotes here, a showcase at a club here in my town with one of their bands that was on their label. And we opened. All things considered, I thought we did pretty well. It was a good show. We brought out a ton of our own people to the show, and we had a lot of the fans of the bands that were playing get into us. And I thought overall, I thought it was a win. I thought we did well. Could we have done better? I'm sure. But we go to dinner after the show with the A&R who booked the showcase, and he plainly put it, you guys need to get better live. And then he went on to, spit out a bunch of industry jargon at us, which we had all heard before, but we're hearing it again. And I'm just sitting there eating my mozzarella sticks, just sort of seething in my brain, keeping a straight face on externally. We get back to the van and I just go, yeah, okay, there you go. What I really wanted to say was, hey, did you watch your band on your label play tonight? Because the lead singer never faced the crowd once. He stared at the drummer the entire night. Yeah, they have 2 songs on MySpace that are blowing up right now. And they were on the front page of Pure Volume. Neat. But homeboy never faced the crowd. Never talked to the crowd. If he did talk to the crowd, he was facing sideways. Never looked at them. But okay, we'll get better live. That's cool. It's so many double standards all around. But I do agree with the whole idea that rockism, sort of inhibits the idea not of pop and not of pop artists sort of, evolving into the rock world or evolving outside of the mainstream. I think it inhibits rock bands, and I think it inhibits rock fans and metal fans and punk fans from really truly understanding what all is out there. Because if you are in a band that for now is considered truly rock or truly punk or truly metal, and you start to explore some of those fans and some of those people and some of those tastemakers and those gatekeepers that once subscribed to what you were doing are going to get alienated. And for what? Because you put an orchestral arrangement into a song, or because you started using piano in a song, or keyboards, or synth, or backing tracks, whatever the case may be. It's a very interesting thing to think about. And I think Finn nailed it there. And I agree with 98% of what he said. So, again, I think the whole idea is rockism only hurts, in my opinion, it only hurts rock. And I think that's probably what he gets to. I haven't watched that video in full, but that's probably what he gets to in the end of that, is that it truly only hurts rock. It doesn't hurt the artists that the so-called rock is the people who enforce the rockism, rebel against. So interesting to think about. Let's go to a fan question here. So this came from, oh boy, Acres Greg LDZ. All right. Hey, raised on the radio, which tour/show moment do you think changed a band for better or for worse? Wow. I got to think about that one. I've actually had this conversation with folks before, not essentially sort of based around the way this was asked, but one comes to mind, and it's only because I would never have known about this because I wasn't able. I was no, I'm not. I was too young to remember it even happening or know it was happening. But once upon a time, I believe the year was 1992. But Metallica and Guns N' Roses went on this big giant tour together, and I believe Faith No More was the opener. But there's some sort of a documentary. I don't know if it's a VH1 Behind the Music thing. I'm sure it's on that for Metallica, but there might be another documentary made about it. But there's a documentary where you can find interviews and footage of this when it happened. But so this tour happened. The two biggest bands in the world essentially go on tour together. Metallica had just released the Black Album, and Guns N' Roses were touring on the Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 album. And Guns N' Roses was direct support for, I'm sorry, Metallica was direct support for Guns N' Roses. And they were in the city of Montreal. And this is the infamous thing that happened where Metallica was playing and James Hetfield got essentially nearly burnt to a crisp by pyro on the stage. He stepped into pyro and set him on fire. He burned up his arm and his hand, and he had to continue on with the tour just singing, not playing guitar because his arm and hand got burnt up real bad. But that specific night, Metallica obviously can't play anymore because their lead singer nearly just got burnt to a crisp. And, Guns N' Roses could have played the Heroes and went on stage and did a longer set than they had planned. And they went on late. They only played for like 30 minutes. Axl was being a diva, and a riot ensued. And the reason I bring that up as an answer to this question is I think what that tour and I think what that show and what that tour did was really expose Guns N' Roses for truly what they were, is just unreliable. Do they make great music? Yeah. I think Appetite for Destruction is one of the best records ever made. But when it came to pulling their weight, playing live, pleasing their fans, stepping up to the plate, performing with you had Metallica with all these songs. The Black Album just came out. Not to mention all the catalog they had before that. Metallica got on stage and really was doing well until they had to stop. And they were probably doing that the entire tour up to that point. So I think what it did is it really exposed Guns N' Roses for what everyone was kind of expecting they were at the time, was a bunch of divas. And maybe not the whole band, but Axl for sure. I think it hurt the band. I think it hurt Guns N' Roses. I think after that point, people just kind of went, yeah, okay. I think we're kind of done with this band. The Use Your Illusion album itself, I think it did well. I'm not going to look up how much it sold. I'm sure it did fine, but it was not Appetite for Destruction. And then after that, what do you know of Guns N' Roses other than drama and changing members and Axl quitting and coming back and Axl doing his own thing? And now, again, I don't want to take anything away from Guns N' Roses because I really do like Guns N' Roses. And like I said, Appetite is one of my favorite records ever. But I think it just exposed them. I think they made they broke a cardinal sin, is they brought someone on tour to open for them or be direct support for them that truly was going to blow them off the stage. And I think people noticed. I think they took notice. Another thing I want to talk about quickly is this. It came into my YouTube feed, and it just reminded me of a time. Recently, it was a friend of mine's birthday that passed away a couple of years ago, and it was just so fitting that on the day of his birthday, and I was obviously all emotional thinking about him and stuff, but it came into my YouTube feed. He was the biggest hip hop fan, but also we used to we used to smoke and drink and watch a shitty show that came on VH1 when it was out way back in the day. It was called The White Rapper Show on VH1, and we could not get enough of it. We just thought it was so funny, and it still is to this day. That's why I'm bringing it up. So, an episode came into my YouTube feed randomly. It's funny how that works, but I just want to show, for those of you that don't know, VH1 in like 2006 or something like that, did the show hosted by MC Search of Third Base. And basically the idea was to find the next great white rapper. They were going to give him a bunch of money and I guess a record contract. I don't know. But the show was hilarious because it was essentially a house full of degenerates, full of white kids who I think in their mind loved hip hop and really wanted to do it, but only a few really had it in their hearts and really understood what it took to not only make it in as a hip hop artist and as a white hip hop artist, but also make it in the music industry. I just think they didn't understand what they were getting themselves into. Maybe some of them wanted to be on TV, which is fine. I get it. But I want to play a little clip from this show. This show was epic. It was comedy at its finest. So what they would do in this show is they would have challenges, hip hop challenges. They would challenge these contestants to understanding and sort of test their knowledge and test how hip hop they were. And so the group of people or the team that lost would get forced to go in what was called the ice chamber. Get it? And they would have to write a rhyme, 16 bars about a random topic given to them. They would have like, I don't know, 15 to 30 minutes to write the rhyme and then perform it for MC Search. And then obviously person with the worst rhyme would get booted off. So episode 1, here's what happens after the ice chamber. This is just reality television gold. I miss stuff like this.
I want to welcome y'all to Elimination.
Man.
The Stupid Hip Hop represents a lot to kids
2000s were the peak of our existence.
Represents where they hung out and congregated. Also represents loss of innocence. And for y'all, it's going to represent a loss of $100,000 because one of you is going to leave here and not come back.
All right, while you were out spitting for your neighbors in the Bronx,
What you didn't know is inside that envelope was this. It was a critique form that we asked all the neighbors to fill out, asking people how did they find their white rap experience? Would you buy a CD from this artist? Were they whack? Were they strong? And from that, we found a winning team. That winning team is spared from elimination. Will break bread with me right here in the barbecue grill because somebody's getting baked from the losing team. Okay? And the winning team from yesterday's first challenge.
When I was writing, I wasn't noticing anybody, you know. I was just totally in the zone.
I like being under pressure. I think it brings out the best in me. But only having a half hour to write, that was where the reality really set in for it.
Let's get it popping. The subject is the Bronx. Since you're the team captain, John Brown, we're gonna start with you.
Sure.
Everybody else sit down, all right? Go ahead.
Over 30 years of rap, and it's made a lot of money. Hit the
John
streets
Brown.
of the Bronx, 5 rappers all hungry. We saw a lot of struggle, but the was kind of funny. The Bronx still the poorest borough in the frickin' country. Hey, yo, we next, in the heart of BX. I thought about Malcolm, my last name could BX. Gotta spit that fire poem. Let's get this ride on. This is John Brown here to infiltrate Viacom. Hallelujah, holla back, little homie.
Hallelujah, holla back, little homie.
100 proof.
My God.
So I headed down the street with a red bag and some crackers. In other words, me and 4 other white rappers. Up and down the street just like some backpackers. Down to drop knowledge. Yo, don't get it backwards. Yo, I was a beat, so feet, fresh meat on the block. A Texas boy spitting rhymes, but still rocking the hawk. But I still put a little trill up in the Bronx that day. Walked on home to the White House, because I'm planning to stay.
All right, man, thank you, bro.
Should have drank
Thank
some
you.
water before he spit that rhyme.
Listen.
On the block in the BX, spitting at homies. It's dumb hot as I flex, letting them know me about how I came with that unique UK flavor from London to NY with my visa waiver. I came to show you misfit persona. On looks alone, get your man a boner. On Grand Flash Stoop.
At this point in time, there were a lot of MySpace white rappers from the UK.
You're always holding it down. I forgot the last line.
It's okay.
Sorry.
It's all right, sit down. John Boy. You ready?
John Boy, rocking that strong
For that
Caesar.
#1 position, infatuated with winning. I loved our first competition. No composition for me to pencil out my attitude. I'm at the White House, but not on Pennsylvania Avenue. I'm in the boogie down 100 grand in cash on the line. That's why I ripped it for Grandmaster Flash. So all in all, the Bronx opened my eyes, cause I know if I make it here, I'm gonna make it before I die.
All right, bro. Thank you,
Oh
man.
shit.
Last but not least, that's it. You ready?
Yeah,
Go ahead, man.
I didn't write anything.
Off the head?
No, I didn't write anything at all.
You didn't write anything at all?
All right, everybody stand up.
I'm gonna start with you, John. I think there was a lot of pressure internally in the house. There was a lot of people running against you, and I think that you took that chip and turned it into a battery, and you really charged through. But project, get it out. It's important. Misfit, the lyrical content. It's
MC Search. You would think of a guy who had, I don't know, third base. You know, everything that I've ever heard about them online and just like legendary hip hop people talking about them, they're well respected. You would think like hosting a show like this, his voice is so shaky at times. Like he's so, I don't know if that's just him. Like I don't know if he's say he sounds like he has acid reflux all the time. Like get this dude some Tums before he's on camera. He's just always shaky. His voice is cracking. He's just like, is it a nervous energy or is it just him?
yeah. And your flow is there, but be more confident. Be more confident. 100 proof. You brought a real, almost cinematic flow, but you have to incorporate more cadence, you know what I'm saying? Not as simple. John Boyd, very passionate. The one thing I didn't feel was really talk more about the inner experience you had with the Bronx, how you made it feel internally. So you guys can sit down, which leaves that said. You got nothing to say about the birthplace of hip-hop, meeting Grandmaster Flash, being on his old block?
Oh, I mean, all that was a great experience. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it was humbling to be doing the whole experience. I mean, it was great. I mean, but to do 16 bars right now, to write something, no music, no nothing. I mean, that's not what I do. Just write 16 bars about what you did. I mean, I've been to New York before.
It's more, it's deeper than that.
Okay, I understand that.
No,
I just
no,
want to be
obviously you don't understand.
Well,
and obviously you're kind of playing me too. Like you think like I'm playing you. It's not a game, man. You know how many people wanted to be in your shoes, sitting here in the final 10? Thousands. Kids in Detroit, kids in T-Town. How you gonna feel when you go back to T-Town and the people say, you know what, he blew 100 G's. You don't even give a to write? Sit your ass down, man.
cuss at me? You mean my daddy? What are you talking about? Sit down now.
I don't think you realize at the end of this show, with my integrity on the line, people are gonna remember that
Oh
you
shit. You fronted.
So this show ends where the next one will be left off. That's it. Take off your shoes. Time for you to step off. Step off.
I know there's a lot of other kids that could be in my spot.
Confident
but at
there,
the
though.
end, I wouldn't take it back. I mean, I'm just not inspired to sit around and say write something on a piece of paper. One thing, I like listening to music and writing songs. So if I don't hear
Homie's hair said, see ya.
music and just supposed to just sit there and write something, I just don't do that. I wouldn't even disrespect him if he didn't disrespect me first. He was cursing at me. I mean, you know, act like I'm one of his kids. Ain't nobody's kid. So I want to say you to search.
Understand this and let this be a lesson to all of you in here. It's not a game. I don't care what we put you through. I don't care what we do in this house. This is not a game to me. I am not here to play. Do you understand? Bring your lyrics every time. You don't bring your lyrics, you're going home.
Done pissed off search. Throw the shoes on the wire. Holla. Oh my God. I could binge watch all 8 episodes of the first season right now. Go check it out. That's, like I said, I think that's from 2006. That's Ego Trips, white rapper show on VH1. Some of the best reality television you will ever see. All right, let's close this out with some new music of the week. And maybe we'll get into a throwback. We'll see. New music of the week, 2 weeks in a row. We're going to do some hometown guys here in St. Louis. A lot of great music coming out of this city right now. It makes me so happy. I can't say enough about a lot of the bands. That's, I was going to say some of, but that would be rude. So many of the bands putting out just killer music. from our hometown, and can't say enough. St. Louis has already been put on the map a couple of times. We've talked about it, but I think people need to recognize we have some artists in this town that deserve the recognition. So today I'm going to do a band called This Is Falling. They just released a track today. The song is called Never the Blue. Check it out. Groovy as fuck. Love it. So many elements that I love. Pop, electronic, rock, just catchy, hooky. Love it. Great hook. Outstanding hook. Hell yeah.
You can't spark or blow it. Don't say it out loud. You'll never be scared with having your doubts. Damage divine, reserve my choices. I want you to stay for just a little bit. I need a hit of that clueless comfort. Stay, I need the feel of it.
Love that short break. Ooh, the solo into the breakdown. Love it.
So don't say it out loud. Don't say it out. Don't say it out. So don't say it out loud. Take first chance to ignite.
Oh yeah, that was This Is Falling, Never the Blue. Outstanding. Such a good song, such a good band. Go check them out, people. Please. All right, before we get out of here, we are going to do a throwback of the week. And the reason that I just thought of this is I recently on a previous episode talked about another VH1 reality show called Supergroup. We talked about it. It was a collection of guys they did a show for, and they were supposed to play a show at the end of the show, the end of the season or whatever. But it was Sebastian Bach, Ted Nugent, Scotty Ian from Anthrax, Evan from Biohazard, and Jason Bonham on drums. I'm not gonna play that group, but so for whatever reason, again, my feed sent me an episode of that song, or that group, I should say. But it made me think about something I saw when I was doing the research on that show, Sebastian Bach of Skid Row. Skid Row had this performance at one of these big festivals where they did the song 18 in Life, and it is just it's worthy of a throwback of the week. So let's just get into it. 1991.
Well, check this one out, England.
I believe this was on tour with Guns N' Roses, if I'm not mistaken. Opening up for them. That guitar tone fucking rules.
Man, you all look good enough to fuck today, man. Sing along if you know the words. Ricky was the young boy, he had a heart of stone. Leonard 2000, he worked his fingers through the bone. Just very out of school, came from the edge of town. Fought like a switchblade, walk could take it down the road. Got no money, no good at all. Walk the streets of Sultan and he fought the world to love. Now it's you got it. It's in my pillow. So far this time it's 18 and not to go. 18 and like you got it. 18 and not to go. So far this time 18 and like to go.
Come on, dude. It's so good. I know there's a shit ton of reverb on this. It sounds like it's been cleaned up a bit after the fact, but I don't give a fuck. How old is Sebastian Bach? So this is 1991. He's got to be, how old is he in this? So he's 23 here. Man, so young. But also, honestly, doesn't look 23. Aside from having the hair of a glam metal rock god. Looks pretty young. There's that scream, dude. That's the best. His pants and boots are so ridiculous. It takes so much confidence to look like this. That's what I love about this era. Yeah. Dude, come on. That deserves a hug from your bandmate.